Three. Welcome to A Christmas Carol, the play. Old Jacob Marley was dead to begin with. There was no doubt about that, and his partner, Ebenezer Scrooge, knew he was dead. Scrooge and Marley had been partners for I don't know how many years. Oh, but he was a tight fister, old sinner was Scrooge, and once upon a time, of all the good days of the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, foggy weather. Even though the city clocks had just struck 3, it was quite dark already. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open, and so he might keep an eye upon his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who was busy in copying letters. It was bitter cold in the office, but Scrooge would not let the clerk have any coal for a fire because it cost too much money, he said.
Merry Christmas, your nephew.
Bah, humbug.
Christmas? A humbug, Uncle? You can't mean that, I'm sure.
I do. Merry Christmas. What reason do you have to be merry? You're poor enough.
Come then. What reason do we all have to be so dismal? You're rich enough.
Bah, humbug.
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be when I live in such a world of fools as this? If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Uncle.
Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it? But you don't keep it.
Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do to you. Much good it has done you.
I have always thought of Christmas time as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time when men and women can open their shut up hearts freely to one another. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold and silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good. And will it do me good? I say, God bless it.
Hear, hear.
Let me another sound from you, Cratchit, and you'll keep.
Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, celebrate Christmas with me and my family tomorrow.
Go on, get out of here. I have work to do.
Merry Christmas, Uncle,
Goodbye.
and a Happy New Year.
Goodbye. Ugh. He's as bad as my clerk. 15 shillings a week and a wife and family talking about him a Merry Christmas. Lunatics.
May I have the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley has been dead for 7 years. He died 7 years ago, this very night.
At this special time of year, Mr. Scrooge, we're asking for a small donation to help the poor and homeless who suffer greatly in this bitter cold. They need some meat and drink and means of warmth. What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
Oh, you wish to be anonymous?
I wish to be left alone. It's none of my business. Good afternoon.
God rest ye merry gentlemen, let none of you dismay.
Get out of here, you young whippersnappers, or I'll beat you within an inch of your life.
It's 5 o'clock, sir. I'll be leaving now.
You'll want all day off tomorrow, I suppose.
If it's convenient, sir.
It is not convenient, and it's not fair for me to pay a day's wages for no work.
It's only once a year, sir.
Poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day off. But here, all the earlier the next morning.
The clerk promised he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl and went home to go to bed. But before he could even change into his nightshirt, there suddenly came a terrible sound that rattled the walls of his apartment like thunder. Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by loud noises.
Bah, humbug.
But the noise came again, much louder this time, from the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. And into the room, right through the closed door, came Marley's ghost. His body was transparent, and his face was thin and pinched and horrible looking, as when he had been alive.
What do you want?
I have come to save you, Ebenezer Scrooge.
Save me? Save me from what?
You have yet one last chance and hope of escaping my fate. Wandering throughout the world, powerless to stop the miseries I could have healed when I was alive. You will be haunted tonight by 3 spirits.
I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to avoid the path I walk for all eternity. Expect the first visit when the clock strikes 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third on the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more.
When it had said these words, the ghost of Jacob Marley disappeared, leaving Scrooge in his room, alone, thoroughly frightened. He tried to say humbug, but he couldn't quite get the words out. Instead, he went straight to bed without undressing and fell asleep in an instant.
Huh? What's this? What? Who are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
The ghost took Scrooge's hand and led him right through the wall. The old man found himself standing on a country road.
Do you recognize this place, Ebenezer Scrooge?
Recognize it? I grew up here. That's my old school.
Merry Christmas.
See you after vacation.
I hope you get lots of presents.
The school is closed for the holidays, but not quite deserted. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still.
I know. It was me. I wish
Yes? What is it?
Oh, nothing. Some children were singing at my door this afternoon. I wish I'd given them a few pennies, that's all.
The ghost of Christmas past showed him many scenes of his youth, of the wonderful times that he had, his times as an apprentice, and how he treated at Christmas in a wonderful fashion by his employer.
I'd like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk, Bob Cratchit, just now.
He even saw the time he was turned down by his sweetheart because he had become so cold-hearted, interested in only money.
Ebenezer, I cannot marry you. I've seen you change from the boy I fell in love with to a man consumed by greed. I cannot live like that. I pray that you may be happy in the life that you have chosen.
Remove me, spirit. I cannot bear it. Leave me. Take me back. Haunt me no longer.
Scrooge was conscious all of a sudden of being exhausted, and further, of being in his own bed. He sank into a heavy sleep. There suddenly was a great light in his room. Scrooge awoke with a start. There before him was the largest, grandest man he had ever seen.
I am the ghost of Christmas present!
Spirit, I went forth last night with one of your older brothers, and I learned an important lesson. If you have anything to teach me, lead the way.
Touch my robe, come with me.
Away through the window they flew, and before he knew what had happened, Scrooge found himself standing in a poor section of town, in the clean but cramped little house of Bob Cratchit. The ghost paused at the door of the dwelling to sprinkle what seemed to be like a sparkling dust from a torch which he held aloft in his hand into the threshold of the house. The dust seemed to make the inhabitants all the happier.
Spirit, my clerk, Bob Cratchit, earns but 15 bob a week. And even so you bless this, his house? Why?
The poor are the most in need of blessing.
Come, Belinda, my dear. You look lovely in your dress. Those ribbons add a goodly touch to it.
Thank you, Mother. Your dress is beautiful, too.
Thank you, dear. Peter, stoke the fire until the potatoes bubble. And mind you, don't get the collar which your father gave you for Christmas in the water.
Yes, Mum.
Mama!
We smelled the goose, Mama.
It's cooking at the baker's.
It smelled like the best goose in the world.
Yes, children. Now do settle down. Whatever is keeping your father and Tiny Tim?
Here's Martha, Mother.
Martha!
Why are you so late, dear?
We'd a deal of work to finish up at the milliner's.
Well, that's all right, you poor dear. You're here now. It's time for Christmas. Sit ye down by the fire, and Lord bless ye. No, Father's coming.
And Tiny Tim, hide, Martha.
Hide! Brr, it's getting colder still out there. But where's our Martha? Not coming. Not coming? Not coming on Christmas Day?
Here I am.
Oh, you're fooling your father.
Come on, Tiny Tim. Let's go into the workhouse. You can hear the pudding singing in the copper.
How did Tim behave in church? As good as gold. He told me, coming home, that he hoped people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made the beggars walk and the blind see. Oh, Bob, he's an inspiration, crutch or no.
Peter was dispatched with the two young Cratchits to fetch the goose, while everyone else prepared the table. The feast was simple, but it had never tasted so good to the Cratchits as it did on this Christmas Day, while they enjoyed one another's company. Look at the pudding!
Ooh, it smells
delicious.
Yum.
Wonderful.
My dear, this pudding is the greatest success you've achieved in our marriage, except for our wonderful 6 children, of course. A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears.
And God bless us, everyone.
Spirit, Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner and a crutch without an owner.
No, kind Spirit. Say he will be spared.
If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die.
Mr. Scrooge. A toast to Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. The founder of the feast, indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind. My dear, the children, Christmas Day.
Suddenly, the Cratchits' house faded from view. Scrooge and the ghost of Christmas present found themselves in the living room of Scrooge's nephew, Fred. There were gathered the nephew's wife and several friends.
He said that Christmas was humbug, as I live. He believed it too.
More the shame for him, Fred. I'm sure he is very rich.
What of it? His wealth is of no use to him. He doesn't do it any good with it. He doesn't even make himself comfortable with it. I feel sorry for him.
Suddenly, the clock struck 12.
Times two.
This remembered the predictions of old Jacob Marley's ghost, and the lifting his eyes, beheld a third solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing visible, save one outstretched hand. Scrooge was shaking from his head to his toe.
Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?
The spirit answered not.
You are about to show me shadows of what will happen in the time to come. Is that so, spirit?
The spirit inclined its head as if to nod.
As I know your purpose is to do me good, lead on.
They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city seemed to spring up about them instead. The spirit stopped beside a group of people in the town square.
It's likely to be a very cheap funeral. I didn't know anybody who will go to it.
Spirit, who is it who has died? It cannot be old Jacob Marley, for his death is in the past, and this is the future.
But the spirit was silent and moved on. They stopped now and again to listen to the conversations of passer-by, talking about this dead person. Strangely, not one seemed to be sad or grieving. They left the busy streets and moved to a poorer part of town. Here the streets reeked with crime, with filth, and misery.
What is this shop here? It seems like the kind of place where people bring used things to buy and sell at a bargain.
Just then, Scrooge recognized his own laundress entering the shop with a large bundle. She was followed almost immediately by his charwoman, carrying a similar load. Scrooge then recognized the undertaker, who was also entered the shop with a bundle. All three of them looked at each other and then burst out laughing.
So you took some of his things, Mrs. Dilbert?
Well, everyone has the right to take care of themselves. He always did.
That's true. No man did that more than he did.
What have you brought to sell me? I got some of his personal jewelry, his silver pencil case, and his flannel shirt.
Not the shirt he wanted to be buried in.
Yes, indeed. I took it right off his body. He won't need an expensive shirt in the grave now, will he?
Well, I've got some of his sheets and towels, and 2 silver teaspoons. And I've got his bed curtains.
You didn't take the curtains down while the body was still lying there, did you?
Indeed, I did. And his blankets, too. I don't reckon he'll be much colder than he always was when he was alive.
Scrooge watched in horror.
Spirit, the case of this unhappy man might be my own. Greed, hard dealing, griping. Have those things really brought him to a rich end? Hello? What's this?
The scene had vanished. Around them, they saw a bedroom, and in it, a bed with the curtains pulled down. A body lay on the bed, its face covered, hidden from view. Not another person was in sight, and though they waited there for what seemed an eternity, not a man, woman, or child stopped by to pay their respects. The scene changed again to the Cratchits' meager dwelling. Scrooge recognized it instantly by now, from the previous visit.
There's the Cratchit family gathered around the fire. But where is Tiny Tim?
The Cratchits were hugging each other quietly around the blazing fire.
You went to visit him today, Robert? Yes, my dear. I promised him I would walk with him every Sunday. It's such a green place, nicely taken care of. Oh, our little child, my poor child! Scrooge's nephew stopped by to see me and offered his condolences. It's funny, he acted like he'd known Tiny Tim, personally.
Everyone seems kinder when death is involved.
No, not always. It depends on who has died.
I'm sure none of us will ever forget poor Tiny Tim.
No,
No,
never.
never.
No, I wouldn't forget him. No.
Spirit, tell me what man it was we saw lying dead earlier.
The ghost led the way, and Scrooge accompanied him to an iron gate. A churchyard, choked with weeds and overgrown with grass. The wretched men they had seen now lay underneath the ground. The phantom pointed to a tombstone.
Before I look at it, answer me one question. Are all these things that will be, or that might be only? If a man changes in his heart, the end may change too. Is it not so?
Still the ghost only pointed downward toward the grave by which it stood. Trembling, as he stooped, Scrooge read upon the neglected stone his own name.
Ebenezer Scrooge. No, no, Spirit, no, no. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me with a changed life. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year.
Holding up his hands in prayer, Scrooge saw the phantom's hood collapse and become a bedpost. The bedpost was his own. The room he was in was his own.
I'm alive. I'm in my own room. I've made it back.
Happiest of all, the time before him was his own.
A Merry Christmas to all! Yahoo!
Scrooge opened his window. It was a bright day. People were walking and merrily, and the bells were ringing.
What's today, child?
Why, Christmas Day, sir.
I haven't missed it. The Spirit showed me all that in one night.
What, sir?
Never mind, child. Go to the poulterers. Buy the big prize turkey that's hanging in the window. Tell them to bring it here. Come back with a man in under 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown.
Half a crown? Thank you, sir.
And the child was off like a shot.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's, but he will not know it's from me.
After he paid for the turkey and sent it off to Bob Cratchit's house in a cab, Scrooge dressed in all his best. He, at last, got out of the streets. He was so irresistibly pleasant that people couldn't help but say,
Good morning, sir.
A very Merry Christmas to you, sir.
He soon came across a gentleman who had come by his office looking for money for the poor.
My dear sir, allow me to ask your pardon for the way I behaved. And will you have the goodness to...
What? Oh, Lord bless me. Why, thank you, Mr. Scrooge. You're very generous indeed.
Scrooge went to church, walked about the streets, walking people delightedly as they hurried around making Christmas preparations. He patted children, and he stopped by his nephew's home.
Fred!
Why, bless my soul, Uncle Scrooge!
It's your uncle come for dinner. Will you let me in?
With all my heart!
Scrooge had a wonderful time. He was the life of the party, dancing, joking, and laughing. And he was at the office early the next morning. He wanted to catch Bob Cratchit coming in late.
Cratchit, what do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
I'm very sorry, sir.
Step this way, if you please.
Please, sir, it's only once a year. I shall not repeat it again.
I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer, and therefore...
Scrooge leaped from his stool and suddenly changed his tone.
I'm going to raise your salary!
Huh?
Bob trembled and got a little closer to the ruler. He had an idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him and calling him a constable.
A Merry Christmas, Bob Cratchit! A merrier Christmas than I've given you in years! I'll raise your salary and assist your struggling family. Why, we'll discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a mug of Christmas eggnog. Let's warm this place up with more coal.
Merry Christmas to you too, sir.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did that and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. Though some people laughed at his total alteration, he let them laugh. His own heart laughed too, and that was quite enough for him. It was always said of him, he knew how to keep Christmas well. May that be truly said of all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed,
God bless us, everyone.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.